So what really happened in Greece? We have a mythological system here and a city-state system that's really no different than Egypt or Babylon or Persia. So why is that Greece becomes the center or the epicenter of modern philosophical thinking? For whatever reason, Greece, it was Greek thinkers that started to wonder if nature could be understood apart from the gods. In other words, it's always been, if the sea acts up, it's Poseidon's fault. If the sun acts up, it's Apollo's fault. Or if the sun does nice things, Apollo likes us. But for whatever reason, the Greeks began to think, I wonder if these phenomena could be predicted. They seem to have a pattern, right? There seem to be certain times we kind of know they're coming or we know they're not coming. What if that had nothing much to do with the gods? What if these natural rhythms just ran themselves? And a couple of things I want to make very clear here. Philosophy begins slowly. It's not like all of Greece transforms. There's this thinker, then that thinker, then another thinker. Odds are, if we believe the writings, because we're going to read a couple of them, we're going to read one, Socrates in Defense of Philosophy, or the Apology of Philosophy, which you quickly begin to realize most people in Athens are not philosophers, right? You have Socrates, and you have his little band of ne'er-do-wells who follow him around, but he's a minority. I mean, he's even a persecuted minority. So the civilization on the whole did not generate all of this thinking. It was a certain number of people over a large space of time who began to build on one another's legacy. And we'll see that too. It's not something that happened to one guy in isolation. It's more like a snowball rolling downhill that gradually picks up more and more snow. The other thing that I want to make clear is it is very possible that someone in Egypt or Persia or Babylon or Rome or India or wherever had these thoughts too. In fact, it's hard to believe, given that there was so much interplay within these civilizations, it's hard to believe that there wasn't someone that kind of put two and two together and said, I wonder if that's always for, regardless of the gods. But it's in Greece. Remember we said earlier that history starts when writing begins. Well, in this case, philosophy starts when we have a written record of philosophical thinking, taking place. So the Greeks were the ones who recorded it and have passed it down, and therefore they're kind of given the credit for being the initiators. So again, philosophy begins when Greek thinkers begin to wonder if nature might be cyclic, right, predictable and regular, and not just the mood of the gods making things happen this way and that. Now, I don't want to get too into actually doing philosophy yet. I want to keep the focus this week on the mythic age. I want us to get a really good understanding of the way pre-philosophical thinking worked, especially in Greece. And I think that the best way to do this is to look at a book. This is actually book 16, a part of book 16, from Homer's The Iliad, which remember I said that's the war between the Greeks and the Trojans. And a wonderful story, an epic story. A lot of you, I think, would really like to read the Iliad. When I was a young boy, I didn't really like to read that much. When I say young, 16 to 25. I didn't really like to read all that much. But I did enjoy reading the Iliad because it was so epic. It was a battle story. It was about the kind of person I wish I could have been. Powerful warriors and brave heroes and, sparring gods. And it almost reads like Game of Thrones, really, more than it reads like a religious book. But nevertheless, it was taken with a certain religiosity in ancient Greece. And so I want you to read this with the idea that these are the stories of our ancestors, right? Think about yourself. If these are the stories that your mother and your father taught you growing up, right? Not about forgiveness and don't hit them back because then you're as bad as they are. No, you're raised with Achilles and you're raised with Hector and these sort of great noble warriors and battlers. This particular selection is where Achilles is mad because the head of the expedition, the Greek head of the expedition, has taken Achilles' woman, basically, as his prostitute because he lost his woman. So he's taken Achilles' woman, and Achilles is now refusing to fight. Achilles was key he's the greatest of the Greek warriors, but he's refusing to fight further because of this personal slight. But his cousin Patroclus, who's also a great warrior, he's not Achilles, all right, but he's okay. He's like when your first string quarterback goes down, Patroclus is kind of like your second string quarterback. So Patroclus, Achilles gives Patroclus permission to lead the Myrmidons because he realizes that the Trojans are winning and are pushing the Greeks back. So Achilles says, okay, I'm still not going to fight because I'm still mad. And again, this wasn't a problem in Homer. This wasn't a problem with Achilles. This was a problem with, it became everybody else's problem. Achilles is so cool, he's so hard that he does what he wants. But Patroclus is a very honorable man, and so he says, I want to lead the Myrmidons, your special warriors who are born of ants and spirits. And it's a great story, the Myrmidons. But they're sort of heroes. Just all of them are sort of heroes. And Achilles says, okay, you can lead the Myrmidons for me against the Trojans. And the Trojans are led by Hector of Troy, who's King Priam of Troy's son. He's the prince of Troy, one of the two princes of Troy. And he's the greatest of the heroes on the other side. Also, the Trojans were favored by the god Apollo, the sun god, who has a particular beef with Achilles and Patroclus. So anyway, I want you to read this selection. I think you'll really like it. And just answer these questions for yourself. It's not an assignment, okay? Just read these questions or have these questions answered as you go through. And I just want to give you a taste before we start reading philosophers. Let's read how people kind of thought and reasoned and created values in a pre-philosophical world.